Good morning, race fans. Welcome back to another edition of Oh my god, it's happening. Oh my god, it's happening. It's happening. This weekend we had the Formula 1 2025 Qatar Grand Prix. And folks, it's real. The championship is going to Abu Dhabi. What a season. What a finale we're about to have. What a race. Maybe not that last part actually. So let's review what went down here at the Race Day Cafe. And I don't have a coffee, but I do have some water. Let's start with the biggest news of the weekend, which is that Adrian Newey will be Aston Martin's team principal starting in 2026. And I feel like there were so many questions being thrown around about like, oh, but is he gonna be able to do his job now? Is he gonna have to deal with PR stuff? Is Christian Horner gonna be the CEO? Listen, as long as Alonso has the rocket ship he deserves, I do not care. And in other news, Mariboya will be racing in F2 starting next year with Prema Racing. Probably most of you missed that, but I have to rep my Spanish drivers, okay? Especially now that we lost Josep Maria Martí. He didn't die or anything, he just went to Formula E. Nothing to really say about free practice, except if I had a nickel for every time that an engineer got confused and mentioned Valtteri Bottas and then the broadcast immediately cut to Valtteri Bottas reacting to that, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Now let's go over the highlights of sprint quali. Hamilton is out in SQ1, so sadly continuing the trend from last weekend. Isaac Hadjar gets his time deleted in Q2, which means that he's out of quali. And then in SQ3, Oscar Piastri gets a banger of a lap and gets pole position. Wait. What? Oscar Piastri? Like the Phoenix, Oscar Piastri has risen from his ashes and he's finally back on pole. Meanwhile, George Russell is second, Lando Norris is third, and Max Verstappen is not fourth because guess who decided to have a great weekend all of a sudden? I'm talking about Yuki, of course. Alonso could never do anything bad. He's the GOAT. Now let's go over the sprint, which was one of the races of all time. For sure. The start of the race was pretty cool though. Oscar Piastri got away cleanly while Yuki Tsunoda did his job as the official RB second driver, blocked Alonso to let Verstappen overtake him, and then basically let Verstappen have the entire inside line. I just know this was drilled into Yuki, like the meetings at Red Bull that morning were serious. So let's move on to the rest of the race, which was pretty much nothing. Verstappen had DRS with Norris and Norris with Russell at one point, but that ended pretty quickly. Like, pretty much the most exciting thing that happened was that a piece of Carlos Sainz's car broke off, but nobody could really figure out which part. Now that's the kind of entertainment I come here to see. Kimi Antonelli passes Fernando at one point, which is practically the only overtake in this entire race. And Yuki gets a 5-second penalty for track limits, so it's an opportunity for Antonelli and Alonso to go up a place. So of course Alonso does the exact opposite and ends up out of the 5 seconds. Anyway, the race ends with Piastri taking the win, Russell second, and Norris third. But yeah, this was probably one of the worst sprints of all time, to be honest. Maybe the real race was the friends we made along the way. Let's just go over my sprint superlatives so we can move on. My sprint ace of the race is Oscar Piastri. We're so back. We knew Qatar was a good track for him, but damn, I didn't think it would be that good. I really hope he can keep this run of form going into Abu Dhabi, but honestly, I don't think I can trust it 100%. My sprint disgrace of the race is, honestly, fucking Lusail. I could go on and on about how F1 is not really supposed to even race here because this track is not even designed for Formula 1 cars, and how every year that we've raced here we've had some sort of incident or some sort of rule designed to prevent an incident. But if I speak, I will be in big trouble, so I prefer not to speak. I think it's no surprise that quali was actually better than the sprint. Well, okay, Q1 was actually pretty boring and everybody was just getting track limits. But Pierre Gasly put in an insane lap to stay in Q1, and also Lewis Hamilton was out. Again, yeah. In Q2, Oscar Piastri put in the fastest lap ever seen around Qatar. No, literally, like, he set the track record. In Q3, Carlos Sainz left his garage with a piece of plastic stuck to his rear tires, and at one point it fell off and onto the track. And I feel like the FIA were just sitting there watching that replay like, somebody should probably do something about that. Oh shit, we should probably do something about that. The red flag goes out for a little bit, and after that, something interesting happens. Lando goes out first, but then he aborts his flying lap, and then he doesn't make it to the line to start another lap, which was, yeah, odd to say the least. I still don't know what happened there. But honestly, who cares? Because he still gets second place anyway. While Oscar Piastri sets pole position and Max Verstappen is in third, which means we were all going, what the hell is Lando gonna do now? He's in between his two championship rivals. Will he attack Piastri or will he defend Verstappen? And the answer turned out to be way less interesting than any of that. At the start of the race, Piastri gets away while Max Verstappen gets clear of Lando Norris like it's barely an inconvenience. And I mean, if you think about it, Lando Norris is far enough in the standings that he doesn't need to risk a DNF right now. So yeah, we basically got the ideal start in terms of keeping the fight alive, but I don't know, I thought it would be a little more exciting for some reason. Otherwise, George Russell somehow dropped down a bunch of places, and that was basically it for the next few laps. Until Pierre Gasly and Nico Hülkenberg both hit each other and DNF'd. So we get a safety car on lap 7. And since we have that 25 laps maximum per stint rule, in case you forgot, everyone decides to pit now. And I mean everyone. People are double stacking, it's chaos out there. But there's one team that's conspicuously absent. McLaren. I think we were all sitting there and watching that like, okay, wait, what? And then they explained it with some sort of weird mental gymnastics about like, oh, but the other teams lost all their flexibility. Sure, I guess, whatever you say. Also, Esteban Ocon gets a 5-second penalty just cuz. Just like the good old days. Nature is healing. And speaking of nature healing, we're also getting a DRS train behind Fernando Alonso specifically. This is how you know that the GOAT is not cooked yet. And so the McLarens are left to push for their lives so they don't pit and come out right into that DRS train. So by the time we get to lap 25, Piastri pits and he is ahead of Alonso by a tiny bit. So at this point we're all going, if Oscar is 4 seconds ahead of Lando, is Lando gonna be able to do it? And so we watched with bated breath as Lando Norris came into the pit lane. But then, the McLaren mechanics were hit with divine inspiration from the F1 gods. And they pulled a pit stop so good that Lando came out just inches ahead of Alonso. Insane how this team can be so good one moment and then suck so bad the next. I think I know someone who probably knows a little bit about that. But now Verstappen is leading the race, so now he's pushing like crazy. And meanwhile, Lance Stroll gets a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, which has a huge effect on his race because he was only 18 seconds away from Gasly and in last place. The McLarens are now on their way back up the grid, and Oscar Piastri passes Kimi Antonelli so cleanly. And then we get to lap 32, which is when all the other drivers need to come into pit, and it's an absolute circus. Well, except Max Verstappen, who is just chilling in front and comes out a very pleasant third. And in the pit lane chaos, Ollie Behrman gets penalized with an unsafe release and gets a 5-second penalty. Just kidding. It's a 10-second stop and go. And then basically nothing else happens until we get to McLaren's turn to pit, where the team actually decide to pit them both early and put them both on hards. And in that moment, Carlos Sainz has an awakening and realizes, wait a second, I could be on the podium right now. So he starts picking up the pace while allegedly having some damage, while Norris fights Antonelli, who is putting up a defensive masterclass again. But then he goes wide and Norris overtakes him. Oopsies. Also, yeah, Isaac Hadjar has a puncture, but we can't be worrying about that right now. The leaders are fighting. Oh wait, the race is over? Oh. Okay then. Max Verstappen somehow wins this race, with Oscar in P2 and Carlos Sainz in P3, getting his second podium of the season, and in front of his two dads. So cute. What a race. So let's go over my superlatives. This week's ace of the race is not actually anyone in the title trio, but actually Carlos Sainz. Part of the reason I picked Carlos is because his race had more to do with him as a driver and less to do with strategy, and we'll get to that later. And yes, of course, McLaren's strategy fumble helped a lot, but Carlos's pace was insane, like on par with Verstappen at times. And he's not only bagged his second podium of the season, which again, in a Williams is crazy, but he's also 9th in the standings now and only 9 points away from his teammate Alex Albon, which is also crazy. Also, like, Williams hasn't changed anything in the car since, like, the summer, I think. So, yeah, absolute cinema from Carlos this weekend. Viva España. There's also going to be an honorable mention for ace of the race, but I'm saving that for later. This weekend's disgrace of the race were the Haas mechanics. To be honest, I'm still not 100% sure what happened with Ollie, but I think the jack was still underneath the car when he started moving, and it eventually caused Ollie to retire and lose his point-scoring streak of 5 races. I'm just gonna say, thank God for certified Haas dad Ayo Komatsu. This weekend's strategy disaster class obviously goes to McLaren. Okay, let's open this can of worms now. We're literally on the second to last race of the season now. How is this team not getting their strategy together already? The safety car came practically at the perfect time. Like, sure, most drivers ended up wasting a set of mediums and even a set of hards, but even they pit, and they did it because it was absolutely obvious that that was the right time to pit. So why on earth did McLaren not pit? It was genuinely the most bizarre call that I've seen that team make in a while, and Monza was not that long ago. If you're in a race where it's hard to overtake and you don't know how to take advantage of a safety car to save yourself some time in the pit lane, then you're no longer a racing driver. I'm pretty sure Senna said that once. Or if you're really not sure of the strategy, then at the very least, run a split strategy. Especially at the end, I do think that they could have put Lando on soft tires instead of hard so that he would at least have a chance at overtaking somebody. But I think what's happening is that McLaren is getting stuck again in their whole like fairness team politics, where like they have to go all or nothing with both drivers so that it doesn't look like they're favoring one or the other. But it's just so frustrating. Like, just let your drivers decide and let it play out like it should. Anyway, if I keep talking about this, I think the entire video will end up being about this, so I'm just gonna move on. My honorable mention for ace of the race is Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, and Lando Norris. I have to give them all their flowers for different reasons. First, of course, Max won the race against all odds. He saw the situation that the McLarens were put in, and he obviously did not let that insane opportunity go through. And the man has brought down a 100+ deficit in the world title to a -12. Insane. But I also have to credit Lando and Oscar a little bit because they were the ones who saved their own races from McLaren's horrible strategy. Because when they weren't sent to pit during the safety car, they were forced to push like crazy so they could create a gap in front of Alonso. And both drivers managed it, which was crazy. Obviously, it still wasn't perfect because it took them a while to clear the cars in front of them, especially Lando. But I can't blame them too much for that because it was really hard to overtake. Anyway, all of you, thanks for keeping the championship alive. I love you. This week's underdog shoutout goes to Kimi Antonelli. I'm sure at one point a lot of us were looking at Kimi like, Kimi, you better defend that position with your life. And in the end, Lando only passed him because he made a little mistake. So thank you, Kimi, for keeping the fight alive as well. For my favorite team radio. And Carlos, extra bit of news for you. Well done. You've just secured a P5 in the Constructors' Championship for us. Smooth operator. Smooth operator. The best moment of the weekend, needless to say, the championship going to Abu Dhabi. It's literally all I wanted, and it's actually happened better than I expected. The worst moment of the weekend is the fact that racing in Qatar is just so boring. I know I said this already, but again, I don't know what we're doing here. I guess it was kind of interesting to watch a more strategy-heavy race, but low-key, it just kind of felt like Monaco, where we were just waiting for the pit stops to watch any kind of action at all. Although if it means that Oscar Piastri can have a guaranteed good weekend every year, then maybe it's not so bad. Overall, I'm gonna rate this race a 2 out of 5 stars. The championship fight was exciting, but it ultimately was still pretty boring. And for the year-long prediction bingo, obviously there's nothing new here, as per usual, but one of these could come true very soon, who knows. But what did you think of the Qatar Grand Prix? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and maybe check out the channel as well. And as always, I'll be seeing you in Abu Dhabi for the grand finale. Stay fueled and please remember to say your prayers to the gods of F1. Please, we need this one to be a good one.